think off the beaten track, Vyšehrad takes you away from the crowds to the city's hidden gems.
Vyšehrad. Vystupujte vpravo ve směru jízdy.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Prague off the Beaten Track. I'm Vyšehrad, now stepping off the metro at Vyšehrad station. As I head out, I actually pass by the imposing Prague Congress Center, the former communist palace of culture. I think a landmark so layered in history that it definitely deserves its very own episode someday. But today, my focus is elsewhere. It's a place called Vyšehrad, and it's a few-minute walk from here. And I think while I'm walking, it's a good time to tell you a little bit about the history of this place. There is no doubt that Vyšehrad, literally meaning high castle or high settlement, played a crucial role in the history of not just Prague, but the Czech state. It was a kind of fortified complex of buildings on a rocky hill overlooking the eastern bank of the Vltava or Moldau River. If we were to believe the chroniclers and legends, it was a kind of symbolic and strategic heart of early Czech statehood. In the formative years of the Přemyslit dynasty in the 10th and 11th centuries, Vyšehrad served as a kind of sanctuary and a seat of power, I think embodying both the spiritual and political aspirations of a fledgling nation. These legends were much later embraced by romantic, patriotic Czech writers and Czech revivalists in the 19th century, who painted Vyšehrad as a kind of mythic original seat of the Přemyslits, long before Prague Castle rose to dominate Czech rule. But modern archaeologists actually tend to spoil this interesting narrative, as their findings suggest that Vyšehrad was actually established about a century later than Prague Castle, probably in the second half of the 10th century. Be it as it may, there is no doubt that Vyšehrad was both militarily and spiritually significant, and it served as a kind of an inspiration for artists such as the composer Bedřich Smetana when he composed the symphonic poems Má vlast or My Country, and he devoted one of them to Vyšehrad. And I thought it would be a good idea to kind of punctuate this episode with this composition later on when I return to the studio. So here you can listen to a little bit of Vyšehrad by Bedřich Smetana. So Vyšehrad was both militarily and spiritually significant, that's for sure, perhaps even serving as a kind of counterpoint to Prague Castle, which lies about 3 kilometers north to northwest from here as the crow flies. Vyšehrad was actually plundered and burned by the Hussites in the 15th century, and later in the 17th century it became an important part of Prague's fortifications. Right now I'm actually approaching one of several massive gates that survive from the Baroque period. There are information plaques here, both in Czech and English, that offer insight into the various sites and buildings that you can read if you happen to be here. I should explain that Vyšehrad, where I'm now walking, is quite a large area, partially a well-kept park with ramparts that are offering beautiful vistas of the Vltava River and the city, including the skyline of Petřín. And from here, where I'm standing right now, I can see the Strahov Stadium, which I talked about in the last episode of Prague of the Beaten Track. There are also several significant historic buildings, such as the beautifully restored Romanesque Rotunda of St. Martin, the old Provost House and other notable structures, like, for example, the Jedlička Institute, or Jedličkův ústav in Czech, which is a medical and educational institution specializing in the care of disabled children and adults. It was founded, as I researched, in 1913 by surgeon Rudolf Jedlička, and it is the oldest facility of its kind in Czechia, and you can see it here in Vyšehrad as well. On a sunny day, as it is now, you can enjoy a relaxed walk around this historic area. So let's listen to a little bit of Vyšehrad by Bedřich Smetana again. I came here with a purpose. I want to visit Vyšehrad Cemetery. As I mentioned earlier, the Czech revivalists of the 19th century saw Vyšehrad as a kind of mythical national site and sought to build on its legendary status. A prominent Czech patriot, some might say even nationalist, František Ladislav Rieger, who was actually the son-in-law of František Palacký, the so-called father of the nation, that I also mentioned in one of the previous episodes. So this František Ladislav Rieger, son-in-law of František Palacký, proposed that the cemetery at the Vyšehrad Basilica of St. Peter and Paul should serve as a final resting place for prominent sons and daughters of the Czech nation. He put forward this idea in 1869, and though it took some time, the plan gradually took shape. Neo-Renaissance arcades were designed by architect Antonín Víl, and the cemetery centerpiece, which is called Slavín, was created. It's a kind of grand common tomb where more than 50, 5 dozens perhaps, most distinguished Czech artists, architects and intellectuals are buried. So now I'm about to enter Vyšehrad Cemetery. The signs at the entrance ask visitors to keep their voices down, so I'll lower mine a bit too. Now, as I walk among the rows of tombstones, reading the names, it feels like a who's who of Czech music, theatre, literature, fine arts and architecture from the 19th and mainly earlier 20th centuries, even though there are some names from the second half of the 20th century too. It's almost, I think, impossible to single out just a few names, because I think mentioning some inevitably means leaving out others, all of whom played important roles in Czech culture. But perhaps for an international audience, I think names like Antonín Dvořák, the world-famous composer, might ring a bell, and you can see his tombstone with his bust here. Or perhaps a writer, Karel Čapek, might stand out. But also Bedřich Smetana, whose music I'm using to punctuate this talk, is buried here as well. But it's not just artists who are buried here. Right now I'm standing in front of a particularly curious tombstone. It has a pair of white skis carved, or rather attached to it. This is the final resting place of Josef Rössler Ořovský, a true pioneer of Czech sports. Back in the late 19th century, he introduced everything, literally everything, when it comes to sport, from football and ice hockey to rowing and skiing. He was probably the first recorded Czech who bought skis in Norway. He even helped to organize the very first football match, at least the first recorded football match in the Czech lands. And before Czechoslovakia was founded in 1918, at the beginning of the century, he was quite instrumental in creating the Czech Olympic Committee, which existed even when Czechia was part of Austrian-Hungarian Empire. So we had our own Czech Olympic Committee, and Josef Rössler Ořovský, who has a tombstone here with 2 white skis, played a major role in establishing it. But he also, he was really a guy who couldn't be stopped, because he organized the first Czech lawn tennis club and the Czech Athletic Union with some co-workers, of course. In short, this guy was everywhere when it came to sports, and later on even scouting. I think he was the leader of the Czech scouting movement for some time. And his tombstone stands among these literary, political and musical giants of the Czech nation. And I think it's a kind of perfect example of the fascinating personalities that you can learn about here at Vyšehrad Cemetery, all under the shadow of the Basilica of St. Peter and St. Paul, whose roof, by the way, is currently under renovation, and there's probably the noise of a hammer that you can hear in the background. I would recommend that you come here with your, cell phone, and you can, Google the names. There are many interesting stories to be learnt about while you walk around these tombstones. Anyway, having wandered among them for some time, I think I'm ready for a cup of tea, or maybe something slightly stronger. So I'm leaving the cemetery now, and I'm looking around. There are quite a few cafes. There are some kind of stalls or windows where you can buy some refreshments, but I think I want to sit down. So now I'm sitting in a cozy cafe, looking out over Vyšehrad with a glass of red wine in front of me. And as I sip, I realize I think that one episode is not nearly enough to do justice to this incredible place. There's still more to uncover, because beneath these historic ramparts lies an underground complex of corridors and hidden spaces known as the Vyšehrad casemates. I looked them up on the internet. They've got some information in English actually as well, and I tried to call the number to arrange a visit, because I don't want to just come there and start recording without their permission. So I want to arrange a visit, but so far no one has answered the phone. So I will keep trying, and I do hope that next time I will be able to take you down there and explore the mysterious subterranean world of Vyšehrad, which was built when this whole place was kind of overhauled and built into a fortification in the 17th century. It was, I think, during the 30 Years' War. So that's where I want to take you next time. If you check the web pages of Radio Prague International, you should be able to find the website of Prague of the Beaten Track, or the pages of Prague of the Beaten Track. There's going to be some additional information how to get here. There will be a map as usual, and of course some photographs as well. So thank you for joining me today on this journey of the Beaten Track to the Vyšehrad Cemetery. I'm Vít Pohanka. I'm looking forward to meeting you next time. Stay curious, and naslyšenou.
Prague off the beaten track, Vít Pohanka takes you away from the crowds to the city's hidden gems.